Okay, so our today's discussion is entitled Let's Get Hype with Hyperbolas. So for our lesson objectives, we have the following. First, we define a hyperbola, identify its parts, and determine the standard equation of a hyperbola, and then graph it or sketch its graph. Okay, so first up is to define what a hyperbola is. It is the set of points in a plane that the difference of whose distances from two fixed points, the foci, is a constant. So this is how a parabola looks like. In particular, this is a horizontal hyperbola. Okay, so we have the foci located at these 2 points. Ito yung F1, F2. Okay, so if we take a random point on this hyperbola, this one, and get the distance of this point from F2 and F1 and subtract those distances, we get a difference which is constant. So D2 minus D1 is always the same no matter where we are on the hyperbola. So if, for example, if we get this point, if we get the distance of this point from F1 minus the distance of this point from F2, that will always be the same as the one we got a while ago. Okay, so for example, if this D2 minus D1 thing, for example, this is 10 and this is 2, so the difference is 8. So if we get, for example, if this point's difference from F1, if that is an 11 or say 12, this should be 4. Para 12 minus 4, it's still the same 8. Okay, so in this example, the origin is the center of the hyperbola. It is midway between the foci, or it is the midpoint of the line segment formed by these two foci. So the origin is the center here. Okay. A line through the foci intersects the hyperbola at 2 points called the vertices. So yung intersection ng hyperbola and the line segment connecting the two foci, these intersections are what we call the two vertices. The segment connecting the vertices is called the transverse axis of the hyperbola. So ayun yung transverse axis natin. So take note that the two foci are located outside the transverse axis. Okay? Parang katulad dun sa parabola na nasa mouth, di ba yung focus, if you remember, if you have this parabola, kunwari, ignore muna natin to. Kunwari, this is a parabola which opens to the right. Ito yung focus niya, di ba? Yan. Pero since parang yung hyperbola, we can think of that as two parabolas. Okay? So ito yung kanyang dalawang vertices, that is the transverse axis, the line segment connecting them. Okay? The center of the hyperbola, also the midpoint of this transverse axis, is located at the origin in this example. Okay? So the center of the hyperbola is located at the midpoint of the transverse axis. Please take note of that. As x and y get larger, the branches of the hyperbola, yung branches of the hyperbola, approach a pair of intersecting lines called the asymptotes of the hyperbola. So ayun yung asymptotes natin, those broken lines there. And these asymptotes pass through the center of the hyperbola. Yun yung kanilang point of intersection, the center there. Okay? So if you have these lines, ang kanilang points of intersection will be the center. Okay? So napaka-importante ng role ng center natin. Now the figure on the left is an example of a hyperbola whose branches open up and down. Parang ito yung parabola that opens upward and downward. So yung transverse axis natin is now vertical. That's why we have a vertical hyperbola. So kung dun sa ellipse, ang ating orientation ng ellipse, whether it's vertical or horizontal ellipse, depends on the major axis. Dito naman sa hyperbola, whether it's vertical or horizontal, depends on the transverse axis. Okay? Needless to say, kung ang ellipse ay may major axis, si hyperbola naman ay may transverse axis. Okay? So we have two types of hyperbola as we've been mentioning. We have a horizontal hyperbola and the vertical hyperbola. Take note that the standard equations of the hyperbola and ellipse are almost the same. Parehong 1 yung nasa right side, tapos pareho ng fractions halos, di ba? The two fractions are the same, except that sa ellipse, this is addition. Sa hyperbola, this is subtraction. Kasi nga parang ang kanyang notion, yung sa definition natin, sa ellipse, the sum of the distances is constant, di ba? Pero dito, the difference of the distances is constant. Okay? Kaya subtraction tayo dito. Okay? Tapos kung sa ellipse, ang selection natin, ang a squared natin is the bigger denominator. Dito naman sa hyperbola, ang a squared natin is the one having a positive fraction or having a positive coefficient. So kung saan yung positive, nandun si a squared, whether it's the bigger or smaller denominator. Okay? So sa ellipse, nagmamatter kung sino yung mas malaking denominator, yun yung a squared. Dito, kung sino yung positive fraction, nandun yung a squared natin. Okay? So since ang positive ay dito, so andito yung a squared natin kay under ng x. Just like in the way we decide for horizontal and vertical ellipse, dito din, ganun din. No? So for a squared, which is under an x-axis is horizontal. That's why we have a horizontal hyperbola. Dito naman, a squared is under the y-axis is a vertical line. So we have a vertical hyperbola. Okay, so yung ating center, regardless whether horizontal or vertical, is always HK. Yung ating orientation, ano? Okay, based on the notations that we have. Okay. Now for either hyperbola then, c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. This is the actually the traditional Pythagorean theorem wherein the c squared yung nasa solo na part. Okay? Sa ellipse, yung a squared yung nagsosolo dito, tapos we have b squared plus c squared eh. Pero sa hyperbola, c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, meaning c is the largest among the ABCs. Kasi di ba it's the distance from the center to the focus. Eh yung focus mas malayo this time. Kay ellipse mas malapit yung focus, di ba, kaysa sa vertex. Ito, mas malayo yung focus compared to the vertex from the center. Okay? So center is always a reference point. Again, where C is the distance from the center to a focus. Ano naman tong equations na nandito sa baba? These are actually the equations of the asymptotes. These are actually linear equations. Yan, kung naaalala natin yung sa ating point slope form, yan, parang ito yun, yung point slope form. Ito yung kanyang slope, tapos this is the random point. Take note that the asymptotes intersect at the center. So, yung center, yan, yun yung nandun sa dalawang asymptotes natin, si HK. That's why you have the y minus k and the x minus h. Parang yung numerators lang natin without the exponent. Okay? Yan, these are actually the point slope forms as I've been mentioning of the line. Kasi asymptotes are line. So ang dapat equation niya, linear form, linear equation. Yan, pinili natin yung point slope form kasi yun yung mas madali na i-produce, okay, among the forms of the equations of a line. How did we get the b over a? So paano natin kinukuha yung slope? Again, nasa ilalim ni y over nasa ilalim ni x. Kaya lang don't forget to extract the respective square roots. Nasa ilalim ni y over nasa ilalim ni x. So same principle as this one, no? Nasa ilalim ni y over nasa ilalim ni x for vertical hyperbola. Okay? So ayun po, that will be positive negative kasi 'di ba isang rising line tsaka isang falling line. Okay, so yung dalawang slopes have the same inclination except that yung direction nila ay magkaiba, kaya positive and negative. This is for the horizontal hyperbola. This is for the vertical hyperbola. Okay, so take note of this slide. You might want to have a note on this. Okay, so let's see our next slide. Our first example is to sketch the graph of this hyperbola. First is to locate the center. That will be very important. So our center is 1, negative 2. Okay, what kind of hyperbola is this? Yan. So since the positive is located under the x, what we have is so there is 1, negative 2, no? What we have is a horizontal hyperbola, just like the x-axis. So horizontal hyperbola. Kung horizontal yung hyperbola natin, that means the major points are along the horizontal transverse axis, yung vertices and the foci along with the center. Okay. So next step is to locate the vertices. No? So from the center, locate the points that are 2 units to the right and 2 units to the left. Okay, left and right kasi horizontal yung ating hyperbola. Why 2? Kasi yun yung ating A value. Okay, remember vertices are associated with the A, the value of the A. So our A squared is 4, so our A is 2. So move tayo ng 2 units to the left and 2 units to the right. Those are your 2 vertices. And then, ang task naman natin is to sketch, no? So, ang particular tayo dun sa covertices. So, identifying our B, that will be square root of 9, which is 3. So, that means you move 3 units up and we move 3 units down. So, 3 units up, 3 units down. Okay? So, anong purpose nitong 4 na to? Baka mamaya mapacircle tayo. It's not an ellipse, ha? This one is a hyperbola. So, what is the purpose of this? We now draw a dotted rectangle through the 4 points we have found. Okay? Ayun. Take note that yung 4 points na yun, yung nilocate natin na vertices and covertices. Okay? Sometimes this dotted rectangle is also called an auxiliary rectangle. Okay? Notice that we produce a cross. Parang may cross tayo, di ba? Parang it's like putting a cross inside our pocket. Okay? Ayun. So, ayun po yung cross. Tapos, lagay lang natin siya sa pocket. That's why we draw a dotted rectangle. Tapos, from there, we draw our asymptotes. Okay? So, paano natin dinodraw yung asymptotes? Using the diagonals. So, remember in your geometry, how do you draw your diagonals? Those are connecting the opposite vertices. Okay? So, this one has the positive slope, siya yung rising line. And this one has the negative slope. Okay? Now, how do we draw our hyperbola? From this vertex, pag ganun. Open, parang it's like drawing a parabola opening to the left. Tapos ito open up, it's like drawing a parabola opening to the right, considering your vertex there. Okay? So, we have this. Yan. And the other part of the hyperbola is right there. So there you go. Actually, it's more appropriate if we have an arrows here to denote that our hyperbola extends and it gets very near to our asymptotes. Yan. Okay, so that's how we sketch a hyperbola. Okay. Let's go to our next example. Let's determine the vertices, covertices, foci, etc. of the hyperbola we just sketched a while ago. Okay. So again, our center is 1, -2. We took note that RA is equal to 2. Tapos left and right yan, ano, left and right. So kung left and right, we're moving along the x values. So moving tayo along the x, dito tayo magpa-plus and minus ng 2, considering this one, and we fix the -2. Okay, so ayun po, 1 minus 2 will be -1. Now let's write it here. I need a pen this time. Okay, so 1 minus 2 is -1. 1 plus 2 is 3. Let's identify the A here, which is 2. Okay, we can actually verify that this is the point, -1, -2. This is your V1, and this is your V2, the point 3, -2. So from B equals 3 naman, since up and down yon, we're moving along the Y values. Okay, so we fix the 1 here. So for our covertices, ito yung itsura niya. Mag-a-add and subtract tayo ng 3 from -2. So -2 plus 3, if we consider this point here, that will be -2 plus 3 is 1. -2 minus 3 is -5. Okay, so this is your B2, which is 1, -5. Okay, now what about for our foci? This foci are collinear with the vertices along the horizontal transverse axis. So identify natin yung C natin by adding the 4 and 9. 4 and 9 is 13. So square root of 13 yung kailangan natin. So square root of 13 approximately 3.61 para mas maggamit natin yung pag-sketch ng graph. So 3.61, ito yung i-add and subtract natin. We're moving along the x, di ba? Kasi pinifix natin along the horizontal line yung -2. So pare-pareho silang -2, no? Moving lang tayo sa x. So 1 plus square root of 13, this is 1 plus square root of 13. And 1 minus square root of 13. Yan. So for better sketching lang, kaya ina-approximate lang natin siya. This is actually an approximation lang, yung 3.61. Now for the length of the transverse axis. Okay. So again, we multiply this A here by 2. So this will be just 4. And length of the minor axis is just, or length of the conjugate, yung minor axis pala is for the ellipse, no? Dito ang tawag is the conjugate axis. So 3 times 2 will be 6. Okay, let me erase the other 4. Baka akala natin 44. Okay, so there you go for our example here. Now for this example, sorry for that animation, an animated part of our solution. Okay, let's determine the center, vertices, covertices, etc. of this hyperbola, which is in general form. Okay, so naka-general form siya, so we have some algebraic tasks to do. Yan, we combine all the y terms here. Ito, tsaka ito. And then the x terms here. Take note that I already factored the -4. Whatever the coefficient of x squared here, we don't want a coefficient there other than the understood one. Okay, so whatever is the coefficient of x squared here, yun yung -4, that will be factored out. Okay, so -4, tapos ito si 24x, 24 divide by -4, positive divide by negative is -6x. Okay. Tapos the 71, it's negative here. Moving it to the other side, so it becomes positive 71. Okay. So let's complete this square. -2 divided by 2 is -1. Diba? Divide this by 2 and then square. ds. Divide by 2 and then square. ds. So dividing this by 2 is -1. Pag in-square natin, that will be 1. Okay. We do the same thing on the other side. Okay. So dito naman, -6 divided by 2 is -3. If you square that, that will be 9. Pero we don't actually just added 9. We actually, diba, using the distributive property, what we did was actually added -36 or subtract 36. So we do the same thing here. Instead of writing 9, we write -36. Okay. It's again this y -36. It came from -4 times 9. Okay. Ayan. So simplifying this is y minus 1 quantity squared minus 4. This part is x minus 3 quantity squared. And this one is 72 minus 36, which is just 36. Now to write this is in standard form, we have to make this equal to 1, and we can only do that by dividing both sides by 36. Okay, so dividing both sides by 36, this is now 1. 4 over 36 is 1/9. Okay, 4 over 36 is 1/9 in simplest form. Tapos ayun, mayroon na siyang denominator na 36. Okay, since the positive fraction belongs to y, okay, this is the a squared. Okay, and we have a vertical hyperbola, just like the y-axis. Okay, so a squared is 36. Okay, vertical hyperbola. Pero ang center natin, we're tasked to get the center. That will be 3, 1. Okay, so 3, 1 is our center with vertical hyperbola. So vertical, transverse axis. Okay, so what happens pagka vertical yung transverse axis natin? Pag ano, no, we're moving along the y values, fixing the 3. Okay, so if we fix natin yung 3, so what do we have there? Let's get our pen. Okay, our A will be equal to 6. So mag-a-add, subtract tayo ng 6 from 1. So 1 minus 6. Okay, pag ganun tayo, no? Yan. 1 minus 6 is negative 5. Yung nasa baba. 1 plus 6 is 7. Okay? There you go. Tapos, ang B natin is 3. That will take care of the covertices. So, ang i-fix naman natin, horizontal yung ating covertices, we will be fixing the 1. Okay? So, move tayo along the x values. Okay? So, 3 minus 3 is 0. 3 plus 3 is 6. Okay. Now, for the foci, diba, what we need to do is get the sum of 36 and 9. Okay, 36 and 9 is 45. That will be your c squared. Ang kailangan natin is the c, which is square root of 45. Okay, so just like the vertices, fix yung ating 3 kasi nasa vertical transverse axis yung foci. Okay, nasa labas nga lang siya. Ay, nasa labas siya. Pero pag in-extend natin yung transverse axis, nandun yung foci. Okay, so 3. Tapos, what will happen? We add, subtract to 1, the square root of 45. So, we have 1 plus square root of 45. Actually, regardless kung mauna yung minus or plus. 1 minus square root of 45 or 1 plus 3 square root of 5. Let's change that to the simpler form of the radical. Okay. So, gawin natin siyang 1 minus 3 square root of 5 and 1 plus 3 square root of 5. Okie dokie. So, now for the asymptotes, no? So, ito yung ating formula for the asymptote. We have y minus k, x minus h. It's a matter of just copying the numerator of the standard form without the exponent. So, pick up lang natin si y minus 1, tsaka si x minus 3. Tapos, where will the 6 and 3 come from? Under ng ating denominator ng y. Yung denominator ng y gives us an a equal to 6. Denominator ng x gives us a b equal to 3. Okay, so parang sa ilalim ni y tsaka sa ilalim ni x. Okay, so 6 over 3. In simplest form, that will be 2. Okay, so pwede nating ito yung final answer for the asymptotes in points law form, or pwede pang i-simplify further by moving the negative 1 to the other side. Okay? Actually, you can still simplify this further. Kapag kinuha natin yung positive version ng slope, that will be y equals 2x minus 6 plus 1, or y equals 2x minus 5. This is the slope-intercept form. Yan, so ito yung asymptote 1. For the negative naman, if you consider the negative slope, negative 2, dalawa yung ating asymptotes, right? Negative 2x plus 6 plus 1. So that means we have y equals negative 2x plus 7. Okay, so that's it. Okay. So let's take a look at our next example. Determine the equation of the hyperbola with foci at negative 1, 4 and negative 9, 4 and length of the transverse axis equal to 6. Okay? So again, anong relationship ng ating center? Center is the lead character for the equation, whether it's a circle, an ellipse, or a hyperbola. The circle is the major character or the lead character in the equation. So anong relationship niya with these two foci here? It's actually your midpoint. Okay? So the midpoint between the two foci is the center. So we don't have a problem anymore with the y coordinate of this center. So automatically it will be 4. It's just a matter of averaging the x coordinate. So yun na lang yung i-add natin and divide by 2. So negative 10 divided by 2 will be negative 5. So negative 5, 4 is the center. What kind of hyperbola is this? Fix yung y, tapos yung x yung ginagalaw mo. Okay? So fix yung y. So sa Hoy-Vux natin, Hoy, yung y being constant nasa h. Okay? So, kung dito yung fix, horizontal yung transverse axis natin. So, that means we have a horizontal hyperbola. Okay? So, kung horizontal yung hyperbola natin, that means ganito yung equation. Si x yung may positive kasi si x yung nasa ibabaw ni a squared. Okay? So, si x plus 5 squared, yun yung nasa itaas ni a squared and not the y minus 4. Si y minus 4 squared, siya yung nasa taas ni b squared. Okay? So, siya yung nag-positive kasi we have a horizontal hyperbola. That's how important that is. Okay? Eh, paano yung a squared? How do we find that? Okay? Using the length of the transverse axis. Okay? Since the length of the transverse axis is 6, that means the a value is, di ba? What do we do with this? We divide this by 2. Okay? So, a is equal to 3. Kailangan natin yung a squared. So, we write there a 9, the 3 squared. Okay? Tapos, para makuha natin yung b squared, we make use of the distance of the focus. How far is one focus away from the center? Gaano kalayo si negative 9 from negative 5? Or si negative 1? Gaano siya kalayo from negative 5? It's actually 4 units away from the center. So that means our C is equal to 4. Eh ano ngayon kung C equals 4? That means we can have this equation. Okay? So 4 squared is 16. Tapos a squared is 9. So 16 is equal to 9 plus b squared. So b squared is equal to 16 minus 9, which is 7. Okay? So since si b squared naman yung kailangan natin for this denominator, hindi naman yung b but the b squared is 7. So the equation is just right there. Okay, so I hope you've been understanding what I've been discussing for this hyperbola thing. So now let's get ready for our questions. Yay! So again, you can always pause our video if you still need more time answering the question. Let's start with question number 1. What is the center of the hyperbola given by this equation? Okay, so medyo i-fast forward ko na po and the answer there is 0, negative 1. Yan. So hindi masyadong required yung solution kasi medyo magiging obvious na 0 yung sinasubtract. This is actually x minus 0 squared. Tapos from here, this is actually coming from y minus negative 1. So 0, negative 1 is the center of this hyperbola. For question number 2, what is the length of the transverse axis of the hyperbola given by this equation? Okay, medyo i-fast forward ko na po yung time and the answer here is 3. Why 3? Kasi the length of the transverse axis, again, it's a matter of dividing both numerator and denominator here by 4. Okay? So, paano yung solution niya? Magiging ganito siya. Pag dinivide, we want to get rid of this one. Okay? The 4 here. So, we need to divide both numerator and denominator of this fraction by 4. So, para maging 4 over 4, mawawala siya dito. At dito 9 over 4. Okay? Ayun. So, magiging ganito siya. Tapos ito, same pa din. So, this is the a squared. A is 3 halves. Okay? Ayan. So, a will be 3 halves. So, multiplying that by 2, kaya 3 na lang. 3 units ang ating length of the transverse axis. Okay? Now, for our third question, what is the equation of the hyperbola with vertices at 1, 2, and 1, 6, and one focus at 1, 7? Okay, i-fast forward ko na po yung time. This is our answer. Okay, paano naging ganyan ang ating sagot? So first we find that we recognize that our vertices have the same x. So pag same x, we have a vertical hyperbola. Diba? Sa VUX natin, vertical line, undefined slope, x is constant, vertical yun. Okay, so vertical yung hyperbola natin. So ibig sabihin, yung sa y yung magpa-positive. Okay, y yung nasa unahan. So, anong ibig sabihin pa nito? Pag kinuha natin yung center, we just need to get the midpoint of the two vertices. So, getting the midpoint of this. Ano ba yung nasa gitna ng 1, 2, tsaka 1, 6? Parang pattern lang yan. 1, 2, 1, 1, 4, 1, 6. Diba? 1, 2, 1, 4, 1, 6. Or get the average, 2 plus 6, 8 divided by 2 is 4. Keeping the 1 constant. Okay? So, ayun. Kaya si y minus 4 squared, siya yung nasa numerator nung a squared natin. Si x minus 1 squared yung nasa negative side. Okay? Tapos, paano natin nakuha yung denominators na 4 and 5? Okay? So, kunin natin. Ganito yung naiisip na natin. We have an idea of this. To get this 4 here, yan. Ibig sabihin, kailangan natin makuha yung distance ng vertex from the center. So, ito, vertex from the center. 1, 6, tsaka 1, 4. How far is 1, 6 from 1, 4? It's 2 units away. So, the 2 is the A. A squared is 4. Okay? Diba? Yung A yung may kinalaman sa vertices. Now, what about for the focus? Si 7, tsaka si 4. How far is 7 from 4? It's 3. 3 units. That is our C. Okay? So, ang C natin is 3. So, ang C squared is 9. So, 9 minus 4 is 5. So, that means ang B squared natin is 5. Okay. So, ayun yung naging storya niya, no? Okay. There you go. So, that's why our final answer is this. Okay, so hope you got 3 out of 3 in this set of exercises. Yay! So far we're done with the slope and equation of a line, circle, parabola, ellipse, and also hyperbola. So to end our presentation, we expect success to be perfectly inelastic, but rectangular hyperbola is how it actually looks like. So good day and God bless. Bye.